everyone, welcome to another installment of Class Axe. I'm going to do this video a bit differently than I did from the previous videos. I'm going to show off a little bit of the features of the class here. I'm going to go through some of the guns and show off several of the gadgets. So let's start with the weapons. Obviously the support class has the access to the LMG class, which is pretty much their forte. This is about putting a lot of lead in the air, a lot of suppression, and killing a lot of people pretty quickly. Some of my personal favorites in this grouping is the MG4, which a lot of people use. It was pretty popular for a while there. I think since one of the recent updates, the stopping power in the gun seems a bit lower than it used to be. It does have a high rate of fire, 800 rounds a second, and magazine size of about 200, so you can get a lot of bullets and pretty fast. The damage on it is pretty decent, accuracy is really decent, and the stability is okay. But as you can see here in a moment, the spread on this thing is pretty crazy. If you tap fire, you can usually stay pretty much where you want to be. It has very little recoil there. But if you just go full automatic, this thing is everywhere. It pretty much is really hard to control. Now the next gun that I really enjoy, and it's actually one of my go-to weapons, is the LSAT. I really enjoy this gun, mainly because it's got a pretty high rate of fire of 700, just a little bit less than the MG4, and it has half the magazine size, but it makes up for that in the accuracy and the stability. This thing is really powerful. It doesn't have a lot of play, especially with the right attachments. I do like to use the infrared scope on this thing and team that up with smoke grenades. You can usually control a room pretty easily by throwing in grenades and going in and going prone. You can usually get several kills, keeping your opponent off balance. And you'll see what I'm talking about with a different spread here in a moment. As you can see, when you tap fire, it pretty much goes right back to where you were. If you lay down the trigger for automatic fire, it's very few. It doesn't have a quite muzzle climb here.
Now neutralized.
Now, since some of the updates, I've actually been playing around with some of the guns that I maybe messed around with when I unlocked them for a little bit and just didn't care for them. One of my recent favorites that I've come across is the Type 88. I've actually been running with this quite a bit. One of the things I like about this one, this is from Battlefield 3. It's got the same rate of fire as the LSAT, but it has the magazine size of the MG4. The accuracy is really good on it, the stability is pretty good, and the damage is pretty good. I actually kind of find the damage a little bit more appealing than the MG4, but I think the MG4 has a little bit more control. As you'll see here in a second. Once again, tap firing stays pretty close, but it actually has a decent muzzle climb. And if you can compensate for that, then you actually have a really good gun here. And especially if you team it up with a bipod or something, you can pretty much lay down consistent suppression fire, and a lot of times you'll find the enemies will just walk right into your bullets. Now let's talk about the class itself. Obviously, they have their selection of gadgets just like all the rest. We'll start at the top here. The Airburst. If anybody's ever played Battlefield 4 for any length of time, you've probably been killed by the Airburst, probably quite frequently. It's very popular, especially early on in the game. Some people consider it pretty cheesy. It does, explode around corners and stuff like that. So if you're hanging around a corner, some guy will fire a couple shots. Plus, it has an infrared scope, so it works really well with the smoke grenades. It's not as prevalent anymore, but I mean, it can be pretty annoying in some cases. The smoke launcher, well, that just accents the smoke grenades. If you just want more smoke, sometimes I'll run with both smoke and the launcher, just so I can pepper a room completely before I even try to set foot into it to really keep the enemies off balance. The dart is pretty much like a mobile shotgun. It fires little darts that really has like a semi-automatic shotgun, kind of a spread on that one. The reload time on it's a little slower than a shotgun, but I've seen some people really wreck a whole room with it. Then you have the ammo pack, which is the default pack you start with. It's a small pack. It only replenishes one person, and it's just bullets to a single soldier. However, you can throw it a little bit further, which is kind of interesting because sometimes you'll get to people in corners and stuff without moving from position. That's a little bit different from the ammo box, which stays really close to you, but anybody nearby can get ammo for all their weapons, their gadgets, explosives, and stuff like that. So if you're running with, Airburst or anything like that, even the EOD bot for the engineer will replenish that. The Claymore, well, that's tried and true there. Put it around certain corners, blind corners. People tend to run a gun. We'll run right into it. You get a lot of easy kills that way. Sometimes you can throw it on yourself. Then there's the mortar. Now, I love the mortar. I've used that so many times on several maps, but I think my favorite is, of course, Operation Locker, especially if the enemy is trying to push from the outside. You can get a lot of really good kills with it if you're paying attention. You can actually get a high kill streak. But it's kind of situational. You're not going to use it on all the different maps. It really have to do it where there's a concentration of enemies, otherwise you're wasting time. And it does have a reload time, which is really cool, where it'll replenish itself, so you don't even need an ammo box to do that.
Looks like there's AT personnel operating west of your pod.
Then there's the APS. The APS kind of mimics the active protection on the tanks and stuff. If an enemy fires an explosive, such as a rocket or a mortar or anything like that, and 180 degrees in front of it, it will actually detonate early. It does take a recharge time, so it's really situational. It's kind of hard to really find a use for this. I haven't used it much. I know on Operation Locker and stuff, people will put it at the other end of the mouths of the tunnels so that people are firing rockets and stuff in there. It'll, detonate it early. Then there's a C4 explosive. What can I say about the C4? It's probably one of the most versatile items you can get on this list. It can be used for various options. You got use a breaching chargeable holes in walls. Obviously, take out vehicles. You can throw it over walls, kill enemies around corners. You can set traps for enemies. Throw it on a vehicle, throw it on a Jeep. As Battlefield friends call it, Jeep stuff, and use that, drive it into a tank, and detonate it. There's various uses for C4, so you'll see a lot of people using that a lot. we'll skip the UCAV for a second. We'll go down to the ballistic shield. Now, I've only found this useful in certain cases. If you're in a squad and you really want to push forward, like you're having a hard time taking a choke point, you know, 1 or 2 people with a ballistic shield can probably help push up through there, basically providing a wall for the people in front of them. Now, they are vulnerable to heavy rounds, shotguns, snipers, and explosives. So, you know, you're not Captain America, you're not invulnerable to everything here. So it really kind of comes down to situational. And then the decoy, I'll be honest, I've not really used it too much. I may eventually end up using it, trying to play around with some ideas, maybe use it with my Claymore or my C4 and try to maybe lay some traps for some enemies, but you really have to know who the enemies are in order to really use that. And then there's the UCAV. Okay, the UCAV some people really find annoying, and some people call it cheesy. And yeah, I can kind of see where they're coming from on that. It's basically a guided missile, and if you do an assignment, you can get an airburst, so you can actually detonate it early. Now, there are videos on YouTube where you watch it where somebody will spawn in at the beginning of the map, and they'll actually put down a UCAV and fire it towards the enemy spawn point, and then as the enemies are spawning in, they may get 10, 15 kills just because of the spawn way. That's just kind of a legacy part from the game. It's kind of funny to watch that happen. It sucks when you're on the other end of it. But they actually changed the charge time when it's like a minute, minute and a half, something like that. So you can't spam it. It's really hard to do that. And you do have to do an assignment to unlock it. So it's not completely unbalancing. It's not like it was. Somebody found some cheese when it first came out where they could literally almost just keep them all in rotation. And yeah, that was pretty bad. But they've addressed that issue, and the UCAV is actually a pretty useful tool to get into enemies that are out of reach, maybe on top of a building, or, you know, hiding in certain areas that you're having a hard time getting to. Hey guys, as always, thanks for watching. Let me know what you think of the new format below. Don't forget to hit that like button and please subscribe.